Hello and welcome to your video on Taoism. I am going to try to make this less of a monster than the last one. I'm going to try and keep it shorter. Note-wise, it is shorter, and because we've already talked about ancient China, giving you that background information, hopefully this will flow a little bit faster. But Taoism is kind of an interesting religion because it is esoteric and mysterious. And in fact, it is so esoteric and mysterious that we don't even know a lot about the founder. So theoretically, Taoism is slightly older than Confucianism. So the story is that there was a figure by the name of Lao Tzu. Now, if you see it spelled Laozi, that is not said lousy. I have actually had a student say, "Who's this lousy guy?" And I'm like, oh my God, that's a religious founder. It's Lao Tzu. But Lao Tzu translates as the old boy or the old master. So unlike Kung Fu Tze, Confucius, Master Kung, this guy doesn't even give us his name. Brilliant. On top of that, he's got this mythical overlay on his life story. Some people say that he was conceived by a shooting star, okay? And that his mother was pregnant with him for 80 plus years, and that he would climb in and out of her womb at night. And I'm like, that is just the most Freudian thing I've ever heard. Oh my gosh. He would study at night and then he would go back into the womb. Now, this has some symbolism in Taoism because it is believed that the fetal body is the perfect body. It is encapsulated and self-contained, and it's in a world of its own and safe. So you just kind of go, okay. Most likely, however, based on historic analysis, he does appear to be an archivist of some sort, which means he was a state librarian. And the story is from this perspective that he grew very tired of the wars, that he tried to teach the things he studied from, once again, really ancient China, but nobody would listen. And so, in disgust, he retreated from society. He took on some disciples and he taught for a few years. But finally, he said, you know what, that's enough. I'm done. I'm going to head west. And so he gets up and he packs up his water buffalo. So think about that as like the, VW van of the 60s. I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that to y'all, but that's what I think of. He packs up his water buffalo and he heads to the western gate. And when he gets to the western gate, the gatekeeper says, wait, you are somebody of significance. I know you're a scholar. Before you leave us, you must write down your knowledge. And Lao Tzu says, well, all right. And he goes out, and for 4 days he writes, and he returns to the gatekeeper, and he says, well, here you go. And he hands him a book called the Tao Te Ching. This book has 81 poems. That's it. And it's a book that you can read in an hour. It's a book that you can study over a lifetime, and I'm going to explain that shortly. So the gatekeeper says, okay, Lao Tzu, you can go on. And Lao Tzu literally rides off into the sunset on his water buffalo. Now, the western gate and the sunset usually represent death or some sort of transformation of sorts. It is also believed that he rode into Tibet where he became a Buddha, or he transformed into a dragon. Yeah, it's okay. So, what is the stuff that he left behind? Because we're trying to talk about Taoism, so already we're looking at each other going, wait, what? Okay, you ready for this? I found online, and I put the link in your notes. This is www.taoistcom.com, Tao Teachings Lao Tzu, okay? So this is a website where they have a so-so translation of the poems, but open access, so okay. And this is the first poem in the Tao Te Ching. You ready for this? This is how this whole thing starts. The way that can be walked is not the eternal way. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of all things. Therefore, free from desire, you see the mystery. Full of desire, you see the manifestations. These two have the same origin, but differ in name. That is the secret of secrets, the gate to all mysteries. So, what does this mean? Let's break it down. The way that can be walked is not the eternal way. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. So, I'm going to assume that we all know what the concept of dance is. Gyrations to music. Now, I am half engineer on my father's side, so I do not dance. But I'm going to propose this to you. So when I tell you dance, what do you think of? So let's just wait a second and see what comes to mind. You got it? Now, if I were to ask your grandparents what they thought of when they thought of the term dance, they might think of swing dancing, all right, jazz. And what a lot of people don't know is that swing dancing was actually a little bit scandalous for the time. If your grandparents asked their parents what they thought about when they heard the word dance, they might think of the waltz. The waltz, which at the time was scandalous because you had men and women touching hands without gloves. No gloves, no love. And you know what happens when skin touches skin? Plus, the gentleman had his hand on her waist. Scandalous. Or you think back to your parents. Maybe you shouldn't. Most of those dances were pretty stupid. But let's say you think back to Elvis. Your parents or your grandparents think of Elvis. And Elvis on television could not be shown from the waist down because he gyrated his pelvis. And you know what that means? Scandalous, right? Or maybe, if I ask you directly, I'm afraid to know what you guys think of as dancing. I usually consider it half-naked gyrations on the dance floor, but that's just me. Would you do those dances in front of your grandparents or your great-grandparents? And what becomes really interesting is the notion of dance, or even scandalous dance, that transforms from generation to generation. Even though we know what dance is, the interpretation changes. Well, that is the same way with the Tao. As soon as you think you've got it, you've lost it, because the Tao is unconditioned. It is the nothingness from which all things come. Yay. In addition to that, I love these two lines. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. So again, as soon as you've named it, it's like a bar of soap in a cartoon. It slips out of your hand and you've lost it. Because it cannot be defined. It can be made manifest. We are part of the Tao, which is an impersonal force. It is not God. It's an impersonal force. But we can't define it. Well, that's a great way to start a religious text. So then it continues on. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of all things. Love this. This is what I call the Taoist Genesis. What is another word for the nameless? The nameless is a no one, a nobody, a nothing. So the nameless, the nothing, is the beginning of heaven and earth. Heaven and earth, yin and yang, male and female, something. So from nothing comes something. You with me? The named is the mother of all things. And as soon as you have something, conditioned reality, duality, opposites, male and female, heaven and earth, you have everything. So from the nothingness of the Tao is the manifestation of everything. In Chinese ideology, this is usually represented by the number 10,000, the 10,000 things. This poem doesn't have it, but that's okay. So from nothing comes something, from something comes everything. From zero comes 1 and 2, and as soon as you have 1 and 2, you can create a number pyramid to 10,000. All right. Brilliant, not even a book. 2 freaking lines. All right. In addition to that, they talk about the duality of the two things. They're also probably talking about yin and yang. I mean, we kind of get this. The opposites that come from one. I am going to give you a story because I always thought this was pretty cool. But Taoist philosophy says, if we're all part of the Tao, then don't fight it. Okay? So the story is of a farmer and his son. The farmer and his son are out one day and they find a horse that has been abandoned. And this is wonderful. This is like finding an SUV with the keys in it that nobody wants. So they take the horse home, and then the farmer's neighbor sticks his head out because he's a nosy guy, and he says, "You got a horse. That's great fortune. Good for you." Well, the son is attempting to bridle and saddle the horse, who's still a little bit wild and spirited. And the horse throws the son, and he hits the ground, and he breaks his leg. And the nosy neighbor sticks his head out, and he says, "Oh, your son. Oh, that's going to be a lot of work on you, old man. Your son's not going to be able to help you." What terrible misfortune. And then the general comes. There's a new war. And the soldiers come and begin to knock on the doors. And they knock on the neighbors' doors and they say, "Where are your sons?" And they take them. But then they come to the farmer's house. They knock on the door and they say, where are your sons? And the farmer says, "I only have the one and he is here." But they see his broken leg and they say, "Oh, he's useless to us in war." And they leave him behind. So this becomes this really cool story. From fortune, you get misfortune. From misfortune, you get fortune. Right? And I'm sorry about the puggle in the background. She has a toy that she can't get to. So there's misfortune. There's fortune for misfortune. She had a toy that is fortune. The misfortune is she played with it too hard and pushed it under something. That is great misfortune. So yin and yang, in a mystical sense, can transform. You can take a piece of wood, a block of wood, and you can put it in a campfire. And when the fire consumes the wood goes from being a yin element, an earth element, dark and moist and of the earth. It becomes one with the fire and it becomes yang. And then once the fire dies out and the wood becomes ash, it is soft and powdery and dark and it becomes yin again. So there's a transformative mystical element between yin and yang. This is where the mysticism and the magic comes in Taoism. Okay. Free from the desire, you see the mystery. Full of desire, you see the manifestations. So Taoism has a big emphasis on meditation. Empty your mind and think about nothing, and then you will understand. The Tao will fill you. It will fill that emptiness and give you understanding. Having fun with this? Okay. These two have the same origin but different names. That is the secret of secrets, the gate to all mysteries. So once you understand the transcendent nature of yin and yang and the Tao, you're good to go. Congratulations. So Taoism also deals with a few other things. So Taoism likens the Tao. The vitality of the Tao is called qi, or qi, but qi. If you watch Dragon Ball Z, because I'm a huge fan of that show, they manipulate that energy. And Taoists kind of say you can manipulate that energy. You can bring in the energy of the Tao into your body. And in fact, this is the origin of things like herbalism. You're taking power, Te, remember that? You're taking the Te of nature, the power of nature, and putting it into your body. Acupuncture, you are channeling the energy of the Tao into your body, and you're moving it into different channels of your body. Tai Chi, meditation and movement that allows you to collect the external chi, right? Although I still want to do a Kamehameha and see what happens, but that hasn't happened yet. It's okay. So are you with me? In addition to that, Taoism has the concept of Wu Wei, which is being and not being at the same time. You want to react to your surroundings like a plant responds to sunlight. A plant will turn towards the sun without thinking and really without doing. In a more assertive stance, sometimes it is making change by doing nothing. So think about the civil rights movements and sit-ins. People simply sat down and they changed the world. If you ever see the videos of Tiananmen Square from the 80s, and this was a big deal, this was leaked out of China, that there was a student protest and the Chinese sent tanks against their own students. And this one man who was coming home from grocery shopping, he has bags on his hands, and he literally stands in front of a line of tanks. And what do the tanks do? They stop. One man stopped tanks by standing there. So the Wu Wei concept, you'll have to kind of meditate upon a little bit more, but that gives you, hopefully, some ideas. Taoism ultimately ends up kind of merging with the folk religion of the area. I mean, you do need your priests, you need ceremonies, there are ghosts to be expelled, and so on and so forth. And so Taoism eventually forms a religious movement around the 2nd century CE. It does begin to teach concepts of immortality, of immortals who are able to transcend the Tao through this great wisdom and understanding, philosophy, and practice. And in fact, one of my very favorite Taoist immortals, and actually these are both sculptures of the time. This is more of the fisherman and the good fisher boy, but I just wanted to show you kind of the bulbous head and the walking stick, if you can see that here. This is another one. This is one of the Taoist immortals. So the Taoist religion created a pantheon of immortals, of people who were able to transcend the Tao through an intricate mystic understanding of reality. Yay! But this guy is my favorite. His name is Li. And essentially the story is this. It is said that Li was a great scholar and a monk. And one day he told his student, I am going to do a meditation that is so hardcore that it will appear that I am dead. Wait with my body. I'm sending my mind out. Wait with my body for 7 days. And if I do not stir on the 7th day, burn the body and assume I am dead. Well, when you know it, on day 6, the student gets a note from home that says, your mother is very sick and she needs to see you now. And he goes, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And he waits. He says, now my duties to my master, my mother would want that. Well, the next thing that shows up is a note that says, your mother is dying, come home now. And he's like, oh, Lord, it's like day 6.5. This guy has not moved at all. I'm going to burn the body and go home. And he does. Well, here's the problem. Day 7, the master sent his mind back and literally found no body. So what he ended up doing was seeking out a new body, and he found the body of a deceased beggar. And he sends his mind into that beggar and takes over the body. Thus, he lived, he died, and he came back. He transcended yang yin and became something new. He became a Taoist immortal. Okay. I'm terribly sorry about Penelope in the background. I warned you that they've been naughty. If you want to look at Taoism from a more... Penelope, come here, dear. You might get to meet her. From a more practical stance. Taoism is kind of the personality B of religions. And a lot of it basically says go with the flow. Taoism loves the element of water because water just goes where it's to go. If you took a glass of water and poured it out on the floor, it would roll down or it would spread out. It doesn't worry about the circumstances. So in Taoism, let's say that life is a river. All right, just bear with me for the allegory. And again, this will be in your notes. But Taoism says, doesn't say you have to be random. You have to bounce from place to place. But it does say slow down, think it through, and then commit to a decision. So, you are looking at careers. In order to get a career, you're in college. You are studying a subject in college. I think I'm going to have Penelope up here, so here we go. As you study, you're actually doing, this is Penelope the Puggle, there she is, the troublemaker. You're actually being a Taoist. Because Taoism says, think about it, explore the options, think it through. When I was an undergraduate, I came to college with a lot of advanced placement science credits. And I really thought I was going to have a science bachelor's degree. She is something. So instead, when I got, I think I was still a sophomore at the time, I took a class in microbiology. So I had all these AP science credits, and I had studied marine biology and anatomy and physiology and biology and a couple others. So, okay. And I'm really sure I'm going to get this science degree until I took microbiology, and then I discovered that the world was absolutely incredibly disgusting. And I was washing my hands all the time, and I stopped eating out at restaurants because, oh my God, we're spitting on each other and the micro world is going to kill us. And at that point, I was like, ooh, science. I was also at that time taking a course in humanities, and ever since I was 8 years old, I loved mythology and religion. I would start reading the books in the high school section because I loved this stuff. And taking humanities brought that back for me. So I literally was testing the water, and I made a decision that what I wanted to do was to get a degree in the liberal arts. And so I changed from science. I stuck my toe in the water, and I decided this was not for me, and I found another river. Now, the next part of Taoism says once you make the decision, you need to commit. I have met people who keep changing their master's or their degree one after another. They never graduate with anything. I had a friend who was in an undergraduate for like 8 years because he kept changing his major. Taoism says, no, you need to commit. You need to gain that wisdom. So in order to get a degree in the liberal arts, I knew that I was going to have to teach. And I knew that I did not want to teach K through 12 because I had a friend who said that she'd break my arms if I went into the system because it was very difficult. I'm like, okay. But I wanted to teach higher ed, which meant that what I had to do was to commit to get, at the minimum, a master's degree. And I did. So I committed, and then I jumped in. I followed the path. Now, Taoism also says if you come to a place of resistance, try to find another solution. So watch a leaf in water, in a river, and it comes across a rock, and the rock blocks this leaf, but given a little bit of time, the leaf loosens and it goes around the rock. Or if the currents are just right, the leaf slips right around it to begin with. So for me, I had gotten my first master's, and I had to have people sign the paperwork, and I kept getting a runaround. And if I didn't get this stuff signed by a certain point, I was not going to graduate on time. And it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So instead of hitting my head on the wall and asking again and again and again and again, I ended up taking a day off of work and sitting outside of people's offices, stalking my professors to get them to sign the paper. But it worked, and I found a solution. Okay? And another way to look at it, if society is bad, you're not just supposed to go with the flow. But it's not going to do you any good to swim the path of most resistance. So in our river allegory, if you have to go against the current because something is wrong, don't swim in the middle of the river. That's where the opposition is the strongest. You're going to drown. You're going to wear yourself out. Instead, go for the shallows where the current is less strong. Prepare yourself, study, get your references, get your background information. Prepare yourself and gain allies. Make it easier on yourself. All right? If you do these things correctly, you'll probably not die of a heart attack or a stroke or coronary from stress. And you'll get wisdom because you'll get age. And that's wonderful in the Tao system. One sign of going with the Tao is being old. So I hope this helps you at least a little bit, and this should not be as obnoxiously long as the last video, sorry guys. But you do have at least a little bit of obnoxious from this lovely little creature here. This, by the way, Penelope, meet the students. She is a puggle, and puggles are beagle pug hybrids. And they are not like pugs. They're obnoxious and much more stubborn. Penelope is 5 years old, and she still acts like she's 1. But she was a rescue that I got. So she's definitely my girl. They're very loving. Just You got to have a lot of patience. You have to go with the flow. Anyway, I hope you found this video to be of some help, and Penelope and I will bid you adieu until the next video. Take care.